Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now. Hi, I'm back to talk with Dr. Phil, and he'll introduce himself. Dr. Phil has a fascinating background, and we're going to be talking about, in this segment, looking at the power of belief and vision and what that means for him, and what that relates to the soul evolution. And we're just going to dive right into the conversation today. Dr. Phil, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. This is a great and respected platform. And I feel honored just to be on here, more or less to share my story and thoughts of my mind. My name is Dr. Phil, is what they call me. I did everything in the field of education. I have 5 graduate degrees and a doctorate, and actually finishing up another, my MBA. So that adds to it. And I was a teacher. I was a school psychologist. I was assistant principal. I was a superintendent in some of the largest districts in the United States. And then I was a superintendent in some of the most rural districts in the United States. I was a national ambassador for the United States Department of Education. And then I went on to, after I did some work with Oracle, Apple, and those kind of folks, is I started my own technology company, and still in the realm of education. Playbook is an innovative reading technology that uses artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition to help children learn how to read.
Which is wonderful. I think it's all needed, especially in this day and age. We're so much moving into the tech area, but in the beginnings of formative stages of who you are, let's talk about the power of belief and vision and where that came from.
Yeah, I had 2 wonderful parents. I have 2 wonderful parents, and they always kind of imparted knowledge in me. And of course, we grew up in a church. And believe it or not, just on a side note, when you, from a psychology standpoint, because I still own a couple of psychology clinics, is that one of the research interventions for someone to be successful is their level of faith, is that they need faith, they need hope. And one, that's the power of believing in something that you cannot see, right? And to be able to map it out and have that vision for it. But for me, I tell people all the time, especially from working in schools, is that if you can dream it, you can achieve it. And there's intricate steps that goes along in the achievement part. But one of the things that I like to do, especially working with children, is restore their dreams, validate their dreams. Because we work on, in school, obviously academics, we work on the achievement part of it, but we deflate their dreams. And then the achievement part of it becomes visionless. That's why kids are barely going to school or are barely doing their work or achieving it at a level they're not motivated, they're not inspired, because there's nothing that they can see beyond their current circumstances. They actually, every day, especially in our urban environments, they're hopeless. They don't see the hope. They're living day to day in a survival mode. And you have to restore those dreams. You have to restore that first, hey, let's validate your dreams. Yes, you can be whoever you want to be, right? And then once you validate that, you inspire that, they start to really dream big. Once they start to dream big, then you really start to help them map out those dreams, right? Like you give them that motivation, and you surround them by, you got to take them out of their environment. You surround them by people who have achieved it so they can see, right? And the other thing is you only can be what you can see. And that was real big back in the days when TV didn't reflect certain images of people. and all they lived in their environment and that's all they saw, they were not able to see anything more. Or if you talk to children in urban environments, or even when I was growing up, the only thing we knew was to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? That's it. And we didn't know that there are all kind of other things and entrepreneurs and just all those things that you can be. So yeah, I have a strong belief in vision. I have a strong belief in vision and dreaming as the foundation of who you are and who you can be.
It really ties into nicely what the soul is looking for.
You're right.
And the soul, which is, I call it the substance of our life, not the ego, which is the energy going out all the time to what everyone else is doing, what everyone else is competing around. That's a small section of life. But the soul, which is the substance, really is the urge that within us, wanting something more, something greater, wanting something to be continue to evolve and grow, wanting to ultimately know that the soul will unite with the Christ and the Christ with God, the creator, the Atman, the I am presence. And that is very important. And that's what's cut off sometimes to the child is that they don't have that sense that they have the urge, but then the urge starts to die away because no one's nurturing that urge, no nurturing that vision that they can be able to achieve something. And when that happens, the soul is like, yay, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're more than our physical form. And so when the soul gets cut off that way, like you're saying, the hopelessness that takes place, yes, it will feel hopeless. And so it just does whatever that the wind is blowing with the peers or with whoever it may be, instead of anchoring them in something greater than themselves and also anchoring them in the fact that you can have dreams.
No, you're exactly right. One of the things I think the world rejoices when you have a hopeless generation, and that's what we have right now. We have a generation of children who are hopeless, and the reason why that's important is because the Bible clearly says that God puts the desires on your heart, and so therefore, if He puts the desires on your heart, that means He already gave you the ability to do it, right? And so, but you have to believe that those desires are beyond you. That you're not just thinking I can do this and then you look in the world and say I cannot. You have to believe that there's something over you, over the world, that put those desires in your heart. It's biblical, and therefore He already paved the way for you to do it. That's why dreaming is so important. You're not, when you dream, those dreams are not always something that you put in your mind. That is, like I said, those are the desires that God has written on your heart. And so you already have the ability to do it. You already have the ability to do it. If that dream is deferred, if that dream is destroyed or like you said, belittled, then you have a child that is hopeless and all their motivations, all their actions are built off survival. And that's what we're dealing with now. And so for me, I was fortunate enough to understand that dreams come true, that anything that I think of, that I can achieve it. And maybe I was naive, maybe I was stubborn. But again, where I'm from, I shouldn't have 5 or 6 or 7 graduate degrees. I shouldn't have a doctorate, right? I should, but I dreamed that the more that I was exposed to, like I said, you only could be what you can see. And so the more that I dreamed it, the more that I was exposed to it, taken out of my environment and rubbed shoulders with educated people that look like me or educated males or that had a background like mine but talked different and knew how to switch back and forth. Once I saw that, I said, wait a minute, if they can do it, I can do it. Period. If they can, and even when I had doubts, why am I in a graduate program? To be honest with you, let me tell you a story. My junior year in college, I was on a football scholarship and an academic scholarship. I've always had good grades. And, my mother told me my mother said the most important people in the world one is a preacher and a teacher. Okay. and so again, I had to pursue knowledge. But my junior year, I had a professor. And again, I just talking to this professor in the office hours, and he said, are you going to graduate school? And I said, I'm not in that track. I thought it was something you had to enroll in as a freshman. He said, I thought about it. I knew people who were in graduate school, but they kind of, talked a little different than I did. They looked a little more refined and polished than I was. And this professor said, no, you need to be going to graduate school. And I never stopped after that. But it's just that validation to my dreams. It's just, just each step. There's always something that's pivotal in your life, but you have to listen to it. You have to listen to it with because if you go from a faith base, God will speak to you through anybody.
Correct.
Right. I was coming in for support off office hours. I've never really talked to this professor. We had 900 people in our class, but he, for some reason, felt inclined to answer his divine appointment and say what was told for him to say, and I received it. Right. I listened, and then I went on and continued. So it's just kind of those things that when you look at, I don't care how lofty, how high your goal is, I'm still going after the desires that were implanted on my life. I'm still not I'm not agitated. My ambition doesn't cause me stress. It's just that I keep going. I know that there's more that I am supposed to be doing to this world. And I keep going, no matter how many people look at me and say, you know what, you need to stop going to school. Or, you know what, you've done a lot in life. Like, why do you keep going? Well, what God put on me is that there is a clear vision for my life. And now that I know that it can be achieved, I'm not going to be stopped in any way. Think about it. I was a educator and I own a technology company that deals with cutting edge technology, artificial intelligence. And then if you backtrack that, I'm a kid that grew up in the inner city. Even startup technology was put in me for so young is that my father used to work for UPS, and he used to deliver packages to wealthy households. And back then, computers were kind of, you buy them, they're fancy, but they only did so much. And when they did, they wanted to discard them, so they sold them to my father. And so I had every technology you can think of: Commodore 64s, Tandy computers, Atari. I would take them apart. I would play with them, floppy disk, hard disk, all those kind of things. And then in middle school, I was in elementary. My brothers and sisters in high school. So they had to go to summer school. I didn't. But because it's three of us and my parents worked, well, I had to go to summer school because they did. And so they put me in a high school summer school. And I was going to sixth grade, but they put me in high school summer school, and they didn't have any other class but technology class. That was my first exposure to Microsoft DOS, and I mean, I literally learned coding and those kind of things. But I didn't have nowhere to store that information because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone who was in technology or computers. Definitely that didn't deal with someone like me. But it just shows you how you are purposely put into steps, right? You purposely have divine appointments that you need to reach. And when you're there, you need to soak up and learn all you can, because that is going to lead you to something else. And so every interaction, everything that I do, every experience that I have, I reflect. And you have to reflect. Many of us in young age, I reflect. I was a neighborhood president at age 15. Like, why am I being a neighborhood president at age 15? Like, I don't know why that's something, but in other words, I'll just always listen to dreams and visions, and I always walked through the door, even though I didn't know if I had the ability to do it or not. My mother said, you never let God close a door that he opened for you. Just walk through it. If he opened up the door, he already made a way.
Well, it sounds like your parents were very wise and very supportive, and also allowed you to be able to experience the urges. We don't realize those urges of wanting to do something, or the door that opens, you say, all is in divine order, in stepping of things. And so what the soul is actually aware of is that if you follow the urge and be consistent in that and persistent in that, then things move forward easily. It doesn't mean you're going to have your challenge in testing, but it means that you're passing the lessons and initiations that you need to continue to grow and for other doors to continue to open. So that's where you're measuring your step. And then you're also having the faith. And that's what the soul needs, the faith that you will continue, because the soul continues to evolve that way and continues to grow. Doesn't mean it's not going to have those roadblocks and those barriers at times, but God says, And soul says, learn from them. Keep
Yeah.
on moving. Don't get stuck.
Yeah. You said some powerful things. And, as I reflect on my life, I had a lot of roadblocks. And just like in psychology, when I said that an intervention for someone is to make sure that they have a pathway to hope or faith, is because those roadblocks or those challenges are going to continue. But if you have that hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel, see, when someone is hopeless and they don't believe that there's light at the end of the tunnel, they have learned helplessness, or they start to soak up the drama or the pain, and they believe that that's their reality for good. To put it in a worldly or practical terms, the phrase learn helplessness came from an experiment where they did with a cat, and they put a cat. This is back when they obviously can do wrong experiments to animals, but they put a cat in a box, and the floor was had the ability to electrocute, and it had a red light at the top. And so every time that red light came on, the floor was shocked. And so the cat learned to predict, when that red light comes on, I'm going to jump. The floor just was shocked, and the cat actually was preventing from being shocked. Well, then they made it just random. Regardless of whether the light came on or not, that cat was going to get shocked. And believe it or not, the cat learned how to be helpless. It just stayed there. It didn't matter. It just, you know what, I'm going to be shocked. I'm not going to think anymore. I'm not going to try to figure this out. And it just laid there and just was getting shock and shock after shock after shock. And that's what happens when people, they lose that hope, and they're in the midst of adversity, and they don't have hope, that they don't have a vision. They don't see that there's a way out, and they just learn how to be helpless. They just learn to waddle and sit there in their trauma and pain, and kind of have that woe is me type attitude. And then those things lead to other mental anguish.
Yeah, how very nicely said, and so very true, because I think there are the forces in the world that want us to be helpless, so that it actually is a form of control, of the individual, and not having the autonomy that the soul needs and wants, the autonomy to be able to say, this may be happening to me, but there is something more, something greater. That's when you talked about the faith and being in the church, and having, excuse me, a solid parents who were encouraging you. And I think even though we may not always have it, and the different seekers and listeners that are listening to us have maybe the parents that you want, but they're the parents that you need at the time, the right time, and they can inspire you to be your best self. They can say, I want something more. You can say to yourself, I want something more. And so this issue around helplessness, it ties into the dreams and trying to cultivate the dreams, of individuals. Say more about that, because I think our youth need that from elementary and even grade school up to currently.
Yeah, one I do want to touch on is that the research actually says that if you're missing a parent, that if a same sex, same gender individual makes a nurturing intervention in your life, it actually makes the gap for that. The reason why I say that is that one of the things I thought that we let go of is mentoring. Our generation, we just have a lack of mentors, just have a lack of people who put on their heart to care and really make a nurturing intervention to someone. It doesn't mean you got to give them money, you got to give them rides or those
Right,
kinds.
right.
But that intervention is starts out with a hi and how are you doing and checking on that person. It's just those little things. It's the same thing as what you tell a parent, is that it's not the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. And so whenever you see that youngster or see that individual, that you make a significant quality interaction with that person. And that's a good thing, because I think that's lacking, and that's something that everyone needs. Even though I had two parents, if you don't have two parents, that there's always, or should be, someone around. And I can map out my whole life a high school counselor that actually, she put me in all advanced AP classes or college prep classes. I could have said no. She didn't tell me why. She didn't tell me that I had the ability. That's the schedule I had. It was different from the schedule that I chose. I ended up being blessed for it, because I was, challenged and successful. But as far as the hope for youngsters, especially our middle school, and you really, if you're in a school setting, you really start to see that whole taken away at a younger and younger age. It used to be that we say high school students, there you only have one or two. You have a person that's motivated to be there, or they don't want to be there. And that person that doesn't want to be there, it's hard to keep them there. They're going to be very disruptive. They're going to be the attendance is bad, all those kind of things. But now we can actually predict a kindergartner who's going to drop out of school. Mm-hmm. There are patterns of hopelessness and behaviors and attendance and withdrawal. There are documented research that I can look at a kindergarten. I can draw a circle around so many kindergartens and tell you that this student, without a significant intervention, is going to drop out, and without giving hope, without exposing them and showing them that there are different ways and there are better ways, and the importance of why being in this school help you get to that pathway. But yeah, it's almost scary because it's happening now. It's in our elementary schools. It has trickled down to our elementary schools where you have kids that are making decisions and they're just randomly living. And they don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. They don't know if it's going to be a minute from now. And so they're self-gratifying individuals. And one of the things that you have to learn is delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is something that helps you be successful in school, helps you be successful in life. And they did an experiment on TV, and they had elementary kids in an urban setting, elementary kids in a more of a middle class, kind of wealthy household. And at school, they went to the school and they said, I'll give you 2 Skittles right now if you want to eat them right now, or you have to wait 10 minutes and I'll give you a bag of Skittles. Majority of the kids in the urban setting chose those 2 Skittles right now. And majority of kids and so when you start to look at delayed gratification means that there's something, if I suffer, if I delay the gratifying myself now, there's something bigger in the future. And so one of the things that I devised is more of a social emotional program in some of my psychology areas is one of the things is just simple, is that you have to start out by teaching planning. I know that sounds different, but if you can plan, you can predict. And if you can predict, then you understand cause and effect. And so right now, our students, our kids, they don't even understand cause and effect. Like, and you will see it in the adults. Why would you, I don't know, why would you, I'm just making so, why would you hit someone and a police officer standing right there? You know what's going to happen. You're going to get arrested, right? And then when they get arrested, then they go, oh, man. And so the same thing is with our younger students, is because their life is so random and episodic. Mm-hmm. It just happened to them, right? Our lights just got cut out. Our heat was turned off. Mom got fired. My brother got shot. Like, there's just so many they feel is random and episodic things that happen. Then they don't learn how to plan and predict and understand cause and effect. And so we have, in order to get them out of that random and episodic mindset, to be able to have to plan and predict, understand cause and effect, understand that these are, in other words, these are your dreams, but there are things that you have to do in order to reach those dreams. You can't abandon those dreams for self-gratification of right now. And so, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't want to cut you off there. It's really great at what you're talking about. It is as if, because of the randomness of life in their world, they only want what the immediate now is. They got that. The future, who knows? So they go with this episodic, I got it, thank you, and I worry about tomorrow, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be alive tomorrow for some individuals. We'll say that, to them, and which is also then creates a chaotic nature for the soul too, because the soul is always urging and wanting something more, and sometimes that urge that it's within that youth, it really actually is the soul trying to say, there's more, there's more, but it's interpreted as it's hopeless, it's hopeless, it's hopeless.
Right.
And what it has to be done is what you're doing in terms of talking about the mentoring is a mentoring of helping them to switch to a great understanding of who they are, what their dreams. It's okay to have them, because sometimes that's the other issue that happens in some households. It's like you're too lofty. It's too big. It's not going to happen. It didn't happen to me. It's not going to happen to you. Type of
Right.
views that go on, which then inculcates within that child the sense, oh, I'm not going to get it anyway, so I got this now, so I'm going to get it and run with it. The pre-planning that you're talking about, or this planning that you're talking about, is something in which I talk about in terms of what the soul needs. The soul needs actually for you to pre-think about what you want to do. When you wake up in the morning time, you think about how you want your day to go. And how can you incorporate maybe a little guidance from your soul? Can my soul help me in some of this? A little bit more guidance to say, Jesus or whoever that master or being that you want to call upon, guide my way, direct my way, help me to see what I need to learn today, and which allows the soul to continue to grow.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. One of the things that I also worked on with people is how you think is how you feel. How you feel is how you act. And so in your mind, if you're thinking just if someone tells you you're just like your father and their father's in jail, or you go to school and they say you're wrong, you're bad, you're this, you're that, and the other. So those are the thoughts. We call it whispering shadows. That's the thoughts that play in your head. Those whispering shadows are in your head. So that's how you think. So how you then that means that you're going to be an angry person. Trust me. I see these babies. They walk around here. As soon as they get off the bus, they're angry. They're mad. And then that's how they feel inside. And so how do you think they're going to act? So they act with aggression. They act with you can't tell me this, or you can't tell me that, or they're irritated, or anxiety. It's a gamut. It's not just that people are aggressive. People also become overly anxious. We have kids that are just sitting in class and they just want to sleep. They just, they're anxious. They're that anxiety. You know how it feels as an adult. If you're under a lot of pressure and you think something bad is going to happen, you just become lethargic. Our babies also, they're humans. They are on that same spectrum of here and here, because they're being so filled with negative thoughts. They see violence. And again, if that's what you see, then you'll be surprised the goals that students set and that their dreams are replaced with other things that are just unfortunate. Half the kids at the schools that I visit, they say that, hey, they say when I go to jail, I ain't gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. What do you mean when? That's not. I mean, in their mind, they know where they're headed, and and these are students that have not even been in trouble in school, but this is what their dreams are being replaced with, is the current reality. And because they don't have that planning, right? Because everything is random and episodic, they don't have, and so that all they know, what they can see is that the majority of the adults, or some of the adults, or the men that they idolize, or this, that, and the other, they went to jail. And the other important thing that when I talked about mentoring, why that's important, is because our kids are being mentored. They're just not being mentored by the right people.
Exactly.
When someone's on the corner and they tell a youngster to come here, they're mentoring that child, and that child is looking and observing, and they're talking, and then that child may leave and come back, and then they steadily are grooming them, steadily allowing that person to shadow them,
right,
shadow them to work for them, to replace them, right? And so the same thing that's what I mean by exposure is so important. Job shadowing, taking kids to see things. I don't care if it's even videos that are showing other areas of people, talking and explaining what they do, and that, these are the things that are available to students, because I'm telling you, what they only see is that, and because of the onset of social media, that's the other thing that they're replacing their mind with.
Right.
It's so what you can choose to watch. Once you watch something that is violent, then that algorithm starts to feed you more. It starts to personalize and curate what it's going to give you. More violent sexual content of African Americans or poverty people or whoever it is, males fighting, females fighting, whatever it is that you're watching, it's going to curate that and it's going to send it to you and it's going to inundate your mind with that. And that's what you start to replace. Again, what you see is what you can be. You start to see your self image like that. In the old days, and still now, I think people confuse that these babies have low self-esteem. I don't know if you talk to them. They don't have low self-esteem. They feel like they're invincible. They have low self-worth and a self-concept. They don't have self-concept. They don't know who they are. They have low self-worth. If they had self-worth, then you know that your body is way more than be giving it out for free. Or your body is way more, not for free, meaning it's you have to pay, but just throwing away, you're giving your body away, whether it's to drugs, whether it's to sexual abuse, whether it's to whatever it is. If you have a strong self-concept or self-worth, then you know that you're better than to be doing the things that are in your current circumstances that people are saying are popular. But it's not self-esteem. It's not self-esteem. These babies are you cannot tell them nothing.
And I love it that you're saying, because the words that these babies, they are precious. These souls, these children, or these teenagers are really precious. So it's nice because when you think of a baby, you think about holding that baby and wanting to cherish that particular child, and that's not happening nowadays at the level that it needs to happen at. And so it becomes really a sense that they feel that they're on their own, and their mother and their father now becomes social media. It now becomes like the shadow of that person that's on the corner. They become their surrogate parent, and parents need to come back around to say it's okay to protect your children, not to see all this stuff that's going on. And so, because society is always going to normalize it as being, oh yeah, this fine. So let them have the freedom. But that's not true freedom. That's actually bondage and chaining them, in a way of thinking, in a way of being that's not true to their inner nature, which is their soul. And their soul is feeling as if you're fragmenting me. You're not being fragmented in so many different directions that I can't empower you to know that there's something greater, there's something more that you need to strive for and be in tune with. And that's where mentors, true mentors, and parents really become helpful to that child, to protect that child, which is also protecting the soul and the soul evolution and the soul's growth that is needed for them to have a life of fulfillment and advancement. Otherwise, we're just now, like you're saying earlier, living in the moment, doing whatever comes to that random issue or act that takes place. They react that way too. They never learn the core aspect. What the soul needs to learn is discipline.
Yeah.
And how to be disciplined and be obedient to the inner voice that will try to guide and direct the individual to make wiser and just choices.
Yeah. And so the other thing is that, and that was excellent what you said. I mean, that was right on point. People have to realize that social media becomes a script for how that person behaves. And what I mean by that is that when you learn things vicariously, it actually, like, for instance, I guess a better example would be if you look at race car drivers, before they get on the track now, they actually do the video game simulation.
Right.
They actually learn the track by vicariously watching it and filling through a video simulation. So that video simulation becomes that script for how a person maneuvers when they hit that turn. The more they practice it through a video, and so if you think about that, then that's the same thing that's happening with our children when they're watching social media. And so this is what the research says, is that when you're in an ambiguous situation, you rely on your instincts. For instance, when I would work with students on small groups, let's say, if a teacher tells you to do something, you need to respond in this way. We can practice it in a small group, but when they're in an ambiguous situation, say the teacher confronts them, they're in a classroom, students are looking at them, they rely on their instincts. And so that's the reason why in counseling you have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing, so it can become instinctual. You can do it without thinking, because when you're in situations, it's really instant situations, you're not thinking. Well, imagine that what that social media is doing. It's practicing and practicing and practicing. So now when that student, that child is in a situation and it says when someone walks up to you, no matter how many times that you told that student you should walk away or you should do this or you should do that, their instincts are going to kick in, and their instincts are from all that video reels that they've been watching and watching and watching, and that's how they're going to learn to act. And that, I mean, you can have a student that you have a strong relationship with, a child have a strong relationship with, and you may, in front of other kids or whatever, you may redirect that student, and the first thing that they turn around and do is say, "Man, F you, I ain't gotta listen to you," and this, that, and the other. And if you stay calm enough as an adult, because you have to reteach behavior, you have to have patience. Stay calm enough as an adult, and you put that student aside, and that student's like, I didn't mean, Dr. Hickman, I didn't mean to talk to you like that. I didn't mean to this, that, the other. And it's like, okay, well, what can you have done differently? It's not, I mean, of course, there's still consequences for behavior, but you have to teach replacement behavior, something that's inconsistent with the behavior that they're doing. And as an adult, you have to keep equipping them with those things that are inconsistent. And pretty soon, those when they start to mature, then they can draw from resources, and those are the resources they can draw from to learn how to better act, better react, and better live, and better grab a hold of their dreams and their vision, and put it to fruition.
Yeah, what you're talking about is redirecting them and moving them out of conditioning responses that they've gone through social media and put them in the right conditional responses that ties into the soul's desire of wanting to continue to evolve and grow and be connected to something greater than themselves. And what society does, it tries to disconnect you. Social media has its place, but in general, for youth, they're more impressionable, and social media knows that. And so with those impressions, they can also create more addiction to wanting to go to certain types of media platforms. And so what you're talking about is, how do you do that replacement? How to condition them and be aware in a different way, and so we socialize them through understanding thoughts, feelings, behaviors. Your thoughts have an impact upon your feelings have an impact on your behaviors, and so therefore we want to help you to think differently, therefore begin to feel differently, and therefore your behaviors would then move in a different way. But it takes, like you were saying, practice and consistency. And that's a form of discipline that the soul says, yay, thank you. That someone externally is helping that soul to be, and that individual, that child or that teenager, to know that there's another path, there's a higher path that one can walk, as opposed to the lower path, which is the path of the world, which is always going to be one of a reaction to everything, but not first cause. The first cause really is God and your thinking and your behaviors, that you want to tie that in alignment with God's thoughts and feelings that allow you to be more secure and understanding that you can be protected because you're in alignment with God's laws. Therefore, God tries to help in any way that he can, or she can, however you want to think about it, to move you forward in your soul evolution and in those seeds that God planted in your heart to say, this is what we want you to be. This is your mission. And you can now hear that mission and be attuned to that.
Right. He said the importance of that is that when you align yourself with God, then you're able to hear his voice. You're able to differentiate between, like I said, the whisper and shadows, the negative and bad things that are said to you. You're able to differentiate that and hear the voice of empowerment, to hear the voice of hope, to hear the voice of direction. And without that, unfortunately, without that, again, you start to take in everything, and everything becomes your voice of reason. And that will get you in trouble every time.
Yes, very good. Well
Especially when
said.
your emotions become your voice of reason. That's the one thing that you do not want to happen. And so, but yeah, it's really the stronger you have that relationship, the more you build that relationship with him, then you start to hear his voice. The more you hear his voice and have that faith and hope and guidance, then you will believe it and walk in his commandments and his steps, because of what he's telling you. He will never tell you wrong. And so
Exactly.
and so even when you're in the face of danger, even when you're in the face of a adverse situation, even when you have trials and tribulations, one, you already know that they're gonna come. He said that but that doesn't mean that it's there to destroy you. It's that you use that experience and you continue to sharpen yourself and grow and learn from it. Do you know how many times that I was told no, or I didn't get a job, or I didn't do this, that, and the other? But what I found out was, one, do not be discouraged, and two, those were things that I wanted. I was listening to me because for some reason, not for some reason, but you know why, but I was given that one job, and that job or that experience meant the world because it catapulted me to somewhere else that if I had got the other jobs, I wouldn't be in the situation that I was in, or I wouldn't have the growth or the opportunities that I had. And so now a no to me, I'm grateful. I'm grateful if I receive a no, or I'm grateful if I receive rejection, because I already know that there's a bigger picture, that his goals and his what he has aligned for me is way better than what I had aligned for me.
How nicely said, because I think when we are obedient to the inner voice, which is God's voice within us, that obedience leads us then to God, being in step with God's will and God's love and God's wisdom of what we need to do, which is far greater than what our small self is. And so I think sometimes people think obedience in a negative way, but obedience to God and being listening grace to God is a place for helping our teens to get to, because then they don't listen to the outer voice of telling you to do something that you know is going to lead to the wrong direction, but you hear it through your inner voice that says, no, don't do it. And you're obedient to it. You don't do it, and it keeps you out of trouble. It keeps you to moving in a direction, like you said earlier, then another door opens. It's the right door for you to walk through.
Exactly. And again, there was one thing that my father said, which was, once a task has just begun, never leave it till it's done. Be a laborer, great or small. Do it well or not at all. That was that was written on my heart. And everything that I do, along with the fact that my mother said, if God opens up a door for you, walk through it. Don't let him close the door on you. And so I say that to say, where I'm from, Kansas City, in the inner city, and you're talking to one of the youngest principals in the United States. At the time, I was one of the youngest superintendents in the United States. At the time when I was a superintendent, only 2% of superintendents were African American in the United States. You're talking to an author of 3 books, and then I'm finishing up a children's series. I mean, you're talking to an owner of a technology company, and you're talking to someone who works for some of the top Fortune 500 companies that met some of the most wealthiest people in the world. And again, it's me. These are dreams that I had, but there, in my environment, there was no way that I've seen that or anyone can achieve it. But I knew that if God implanted these dreams in my heart, that it's achievable. And it's just a matter of me walking in faith and answering the call every time he directs my path, and like people say, Jesus take the wheel as he's taking the wheel. Now, did I have hardships? Again, I did. But to have that hope, to know that I'm still part of a bigger picture, I'm still part of a bigger assignment, and these failures are not going to define me, but I'm going to grow, because I'm going to take these failures with me and learn from them and be a better person. And to understand that concept is not even new. Like, even when they say Benjamin Franklin, I think it was almost like, a couple of thousand times that he failed at developing a light bulb. Well, he took it as, these are now I know what not to do. So I won't have to do that again when I'm trying to develop this light bulb. I know that this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And it took him a time to develop one of a very important, obviously a tool that's transcend time, the light. And so it's the same thing for me. You can look at failures and have a hopeless mentality and say, I'm nothing. I can't do this, or I can't do that, or look at me, because I failed. Or you can have that mentality to understand that this is just an experience. It doesn't define me. So I do want to say something real quick is that I still think that we have a responsibility as adults with children to instill that hope. Be careful of how we correct students. And I say that, and I know I keep talking from a school frame, but if you can apply it anywhere else. But so, for instance, in one of the schools, I actually started a charter school in inner city, and we had kids that would come to kindergarten. They didn't know their names. They didn't know colors. Like they would sit at the table and say, "Who this?" Johnny, that's you. I'm not even Johnny. My name is Big Daddy or Boo Boo or like, oh, your name is Johnny. Or this is the color red and this is number one or this, that, and the other. The reason why, because kindergarten is the assumption that someone had taught you at home. So when people say, are you kindergarten ready? That means that something happened beforehand. We have a lot of kids that nothing has happened beforehand. And we can blame parents, but we also have a new generation called the working poor. We have adults who work 18, 19 hours a day just to maintain poverty, 20 hours a day. And that means that that child is unattended. And so what I'm saying is that we have to make sure that our interventions are significant the minute second that youngster walks into the door. There's a better way to say, you're wrong. This is not the color red. No, no, no. I mean, because that student, from an academic standpoint, that student is not ready. Everything they do is going to be a no. And that's when you really start to break that student down. Is a psychology principle, they call it the self-efficacy, your perceived ability to do a task. So it start, you get it through vicarious learning, you get it through verbal affirmation or not, you get it through actual experience. So if I'm vicariously, if I look around, I see that my same age peers and people are getting it and I don't understand the color red, I internalize that. Verbally, my teacher tells me no, I internalize that. My actual experience, I look on my paper, I have a red X on my paper. Now I experience that. So now everything that tells you is school is you're not good at school. But the minute I pick up, and this is I can say with my own child, the minute I have an infant son, I used to play football and played in college, made it to semi-pros and pros of Jaguars. But I have my son, I'm holding my son, and people say, look at this little football player. Look at this little basketball player. And I'm like, if you no, don't feed my son that. Right now, my son's a freshman at USC, a full scholarship from NASA and from Amazon. He's going to be an astronautical engineer. He receives an internship this summer, $50,000 just for 2 months with SpaceX. And so, but my point is that now you have a youngster that gets all these no's in school, and they pick up a ball, and everybody's eyes are big. They're praising the student and making them think that this is this. Then that becomes their perceived ability, that what they can do, and that's why. And when you have a strong self-efficacy, you cannot be stopped. That's why you have. And so this may not come out well, but that's why you can have a high school student that has never been on a basketball team, that is 4'11" and maybe out of shape physically, and you still talk to them and they say, I'm going to the NBA play basketball. Like, because that's their perceived ability. And so they become resilient. You'll see them practicing basketball, but it's like, wait a minute, you've never been on the team, you didn't make the team, you've been cut every year. You necessarily don't have the height or whatever it is that allows you to excel in that sport, is what I'm saying. But they're persistent all the way through, as opposed to helping a child at that young age in kindergarten, intentionally developing their self-efficacy, redirecting them without the consequence of you're wrong or big red X's or and you start to teach them, and you build a different game plan in them, and then that child will be successful. It's actually one of the books that I read. I wrote a book called Stop Dribbling Footballs. and it depicts a young man that grew up in everything in basketball, grew up. And so he gets on a bus and he's wearing a basketball uniform and he has a ball, and everybody else has on a football uniform and helmet. And so he automatically realizes he's in the wrong place. He gets off the bus to adults. They are pointing and talking about him. And anyway, long story short, he actually gets on the football field. They hike the ball to him and he starts to dribble it because that's what he knows.
Mm-hmm.
That's his prior experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach says, stop dribbling footballs. And so people are saying, maybe he has ADHD. He needs to be on medicine. Maybe he needs to go to, be locked up. All this kind of stuff people are saying. But the long story short, the end story is that a coach sat down with this student and direct taught the instructions of football, and that student will be successful. And the reason why that's important is because when we look at behaviors, when we look at attitudes, if a student is failing academically and math, we remediate. We give them tutoring. We give them instruction. When a student is failing behavior-wise, we kick them out. That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. If a student's failing math, why don't we just kick them out because they're gonna all of a sudden get it, right? No, they're not. You have to direct teach. The same thing. You have to direct teach behavior, direct teach planning, hope, all those things in our students instead of continually suggest you're wrong, and you teach whole group and expect them to get it.
I mean, that was said very nicely and so true. And I hope our seekers listen to this and maybe listen to it several times because there's a lot of wealth of wisdom that's being taught. And one of the things that really struck me when you were talking, Dr. Phil, was this whole notion that if we don't direct our children to have a greater self-efficacy that exists within them, that is tied to something greater than their soul, themselves, which I'm calling the soul, and anchored in that, and also have a greater sense that there's a greater reason for being in life. And if we're not doing that, and we're conditioning them just to do the basketball thing, and they're on the football bus, then it's going to continue confusion for them, and also a greater sense that, no, I'm not in the right place, but I don't know why. All they can see is that they do got the ball, but it's the wrong ball, that they have. And what they need to be able to do, and what parents need to be able to do, and what mentors need to be able to do, is to have kind conversations, supportive conversations, uplifting conversations that don't attack the person and just look at the behavior and say the behavior is not accurate, but the person, that soul, is a good and godly. And we want to have that person tie into that as we're working with them to be able to try to do that. And so I think about the subconscious, the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious levels. The more we keep on pressing things into the conscious level, it moves into subconscious and then unconscious, and it becomes just a part of the person's behavior. And they don't realize where it came from. So there's been a wealth of discussion here that we've had in our conversations. And is there any one thing that you want to leave with the listeners or seekers that would be helpful to them, something to them to reflect on?
Yeah, it's do not give up on your dreams. Again, we'll go back to, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. And even the responsibility that we have is to continue to nurture the dreams of those under us as well, and alongside us and above us, right? We know some adults that have lost their ability to have hope, lost their ability to dream, and it's never too late. It's never too late.
As long as you take a breath, you have the opportunity to continue to advance and to improve and to be your best self. I thank you. We're going to be having Dr. Phil come back and with a part 2. But I just want to say for this part, it's been a really enlightening conversation and something for everyone to think about as you're moving forward in your lives and the lives of your children, and also those who may not be your children, but you're around, that you may be able to have a positive influence with. Thank you. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.